Hey Squishies, is back again for another vlog. This is Steven Universe, Season 4, Episodes 19 and 20, I believe. Tiger Philanthropist and Room for Ruby. So, jumping right in with Tiger Philanthropist. This was definitely the sequel I never asked for. I don't know about anybody else. I don't think I made a big secret. Tiger Millionaire was not really my favorite episode. It wasn't bad. There really are no bad episodes of Steven Universe so far, but it wasn't the best by a long shot. And honestly, I don't feel like the Tiger Philanthropist added much. It did kind of serve as saying, like, things are shifting a little. Steven and Amethyst's relationship is a little different now that they have a little more self-esteem, a little more self-worth. Now, Amethyst does at any rate. Steven, I think, does too, but that wasn't why, as he says, that wasn't why he was wrestling. He did it because it was his and Amethyst's thing. I don't think that there was a huge need for it, but it was a reasonably cute little story. Like I said, it's not a bad episode. And it does fit in well after Rocknaldo, because Lars is being a different kind of selfish fan. He's the fan who says his opinions as if they're universal consensus in the fandom. And what I mean is, compare the first two matches in this episode. The tag team match where Purple Puma quits, and Tiger Philanthropist's debut match. And you'll notice there's about the same amount of cheering in both, except for Lars. Pretty much everybody is cheering for Tiger Philanthropist. It's only Lars that has a problem. But the way, when he's talking with Steven the next day, the way Lars words it, he phrases it like Tiger Philanthropist is an objectively bad, like, wrestling gimmick. As if it makes less sense than Tiger Millionaire did in the first place. Because that was the whole joke, that Tiger Millionaire was completely nonsensical. My understanding, and again I say this as somebody who's never really followed wrestling, my understanding is that's pretty typical for wrestling gimmicks, that they tend not to make a ton of sense. And that's fine. That's how the genre works. But you know, Steven makes the classic mistake of trying to please the fans. And for any creative endeavor, and I'm going to count wrestling as a creative endeavor here, certainly the creation of characters for wrestling is a creative endeavor. For any creative endeavor, trying to please your fans is just a bad move. Because they are your fans in the first place because they like what you're doing. Changing what you're doing... No, and keep in mind, they're your fans because they like what you're doing, and presumably they are not creators in the way you are, so you are more of an expert in making this stuff than they are. Doing what they want you to do is then taking something that they liked and following the instructions of somebody who's less good at it. That's going to usually produce worse results. And you can see this again and again with long-running things, like 80s Doctor Who tried too hard to please its fans and ended up pleasing nobody in like the 5th and 6th Doctor eras. You can see it with Star Trek. Voyager was created in response to people who were complaining about Deep Space Nine as being too far from the classic idea of what Star Trek was. And this was kind of mixing in with complaints about TNG, that it felt too safe, too comfortable. They didn't feel like they were out on the frontier. They felt like they were zipping around the home area. DS9 had more of a frontier feel, but it was also not moving. So the whole idea of Voyager was, let's fling these characters completely out of reach of any assistance from the Federation. So they are definitely 100% out on the frontier and have no choice but to explore on their way home. And Voyager, despite getting a lot more support from the studio than DS9, critically and in the eyes of fans, was definitely inferior to TNG in like the evaluations of the time, and most people who watched both considered it inferior to DS9. Certainly it had its fans, but by and large it did not please the people it was created to please. Now, looking back on it in hindsight, once you accept it for what it is, it's actually not a bad show. But at the time, it had a lot of hate. And that's the mistake that Steven is making. He's the one who came up with Tiger Millionaire and entertained people with that. He's the one, but then, because one person is disappointed with him ending it, he tries to please that one person. And he keeps trying to please that one person, and that person is unpleasable, because he's Lars, and Lars is never happy. So, things very narrowly, things go very wrong. He decides to quit in a way that pleases nobody. But then the Purple Puma comes back, and we have, Amethyst saves the day, and it's a very cute ending. And that's it for wrestling on the show forever, probably. I can't say I'm hugely sorry to see it go, because again, not one of the great episodes. Room for Ruby, on the other hand, contender for, it's not in the top tier, but it's definitely an upper tier episode. There's so much going on in this one. The shift of Ruby from, friendly to sinister, even though she's very suspicious all along, but that moment of confirmation is just so beautifully well done. The smile and the evil laugh, the combination of the two reminds me of one of the best shows of the past year, which seems to have flown under a lot of people's radar, is, I think it's an NBC sitcom called The Good Place. And it ran for 13 episodes. I think there's a season 2 coming late this year. But I am actually, normally I don't care about spoilers. With the sole exception of stuff where me going in blind is part of the premise. But generally speaking, I don't give a crap about spoilers normally, but this is a case where I'm actually going to deliberately avoid spoilers, because it is such a good moment if you don't see it coming. There is a moment in the series where a character gives an evil smile and an evil laugh, and it completely recontextualizes everything, and it's brilliantly acted, and it's just one of the best, bits of acting I have ever seen in a TV show. Certainly one of the best bits of acting I've ever seen in a sitcom. Really good show. I highly recommend it. I don't know what streaming services it's on. I know all of it is on Xfinity, but that's not hugely accessible. I don't know what other services it might be on. But it's a really good show, and if you can find it, I highly recommend it. Anyway, similar moment here. The smile and the evil laugh that, confirms your suspicions. Confirms that this Ruby is no less evil than the other ones. She's not seeking redemption. She's seeking her ship. And probably revenge. That's probably her motivation. Or just straight up sadism. for why she wants to see Steven react to her tricking him. He did dump her into space. She's got motivation in that respect. But I really like that they used the nicest of the rubies for this, because Navy was superficially nice. Navy was a little bit daffy, is probably the best way to put it. She came across as being a little bit detached, not really clear on what was going on, and just sort of had a sweet voice. And I think she was the one that, like, implied that she knew Steven was tricking them, but was going along with it because the baseball game was fun at the end of the baseball episode, if I remember right. Regardless, she's not nice. Like, she's a soldier of a brutal empire. And she does her job, which is not a nice job. You know, she chooses not to be part of the little redemption thing going on in the barn. She deliberately, sadistically toys with them. And of course, Garnet saw this coming. She's got future vision. She knew this was a probable outcome. She even says so at the end, but it was still worth a shot. And that's a reminder to us of two things. First is that Garnet does not see the future. She sees possibilities and probabilities. She saw, even though the likelier outcome was Ruby stealing the ship, she saw the possibility of redeeming Ruby. The less likely outcome, she saw that as still being worth trying for. And that's important. Because having Ruby fly away in that ship is a freaking disaster. As we learned in the zoo arc, the Diamonds believe that Earth has been or is about to be destroyed. They do not know the crystal gems are still there. Ruby does. Ruby can lead them right to the barn. Ruby, meaning Navy, can tell them the Earth has not been destroyed. It doesn't show any signs of being about to be destroyed. And they've lost their spaceship. It's an all-around bad time. Bad thing to have happen. But Garnet still saw it as worth it if it meant redeeming Ruby. Second, remember the limitation on Garnet's future vision that we learned about in the answer. Love can change destiny. Love can alter the future, can create futures that did not previously exist as even a possibility. It can shift the probabilities so that an unlikely future becomes likely. And love is Steven's superpower. Like, he has his gem powers, and he has what I've referred to before as his human powers, like resistance to gem weapons. But his real superpower is his capacity to love, and his boundless optimism and hope and belief that people can be redeemed. And that love could have altered things, could have made Navy change course. And so that creates even more uncertainty in Garnet's predictions of the future. And that's also worth remembering going forward. Garnet cannot always predict these, redemption kind of things. Garnet can't predict everything that happens. And that's good. That's good, because having a character who knows everything that's going to happen 100% of the time is pretty limiting story-wise. It would force a lot of taking Garnet out of the picture so that other characters can make mistakes. And I'm glad that they keep emphasizing that, no, Garnet doesn't know with certainty everything that's going to happen. Otherwise, the big thing in this episode was, of course, Lapis. and Lapis's very negative reaction to how positive Ruby was being. And that's understandable. Lapis has had a very traumatic time of it. She is just beginning to adjust to living on Earth, and she still has a lot of anger to the world around her in general, to Jasper, to the Homeworld gems, probably still to the Crystal gems. She's got a lot of anger toward a lot of people. The only people she really doesn't seem to have any resentment toward are Steven and Peridot. And even Peridot, it took her a long time to come around. Whereas Navy just embraces everything instantly. And that's got to be really frustrating for Lapis, to see things that she had to struggle for emotionally to come so easily to someone else, to see someone else not go through the trial and hardship and trauma that she did, kind of feels like it's delegitimizing what she went through. And that's frustrating, and she's resentful of it. Understandably so. But she's also right. She's right that Ruby is lying. She's right that, I keep calling her Ruby, Navy, whatever. She's right that Navy is tricking them. Because just because something is coming from a place of resentment, just because she's basing her distrust on emotion rather than, logic, doesn't mean she's necessarily wrong. Both in just like the logical fallacy sense of, just because somebody's argument is not well supported doesn't mean their conclusion is automatically false. You can have bad premises leading up to a true conclusion. It just means that the conclusion doesn't automatically follow. You can't be sure if it's true or not. But more importantly, she is very aware of what it's like to go through adjusting to life on Earth. And Ruby's behavior is raising red flags for her. She can't, in the moment, express them in any way other than her emotional responses and her resentment. But she's picking up on genuine red flags, and they're the same red flags that a lot of viewers, I suspect, picked up on. That it was too easy for Navy. That she was too quick to embrace everything, too good at everything she tried. That that the other shoe had to drop. And Lapis is picking up on the same things because she's resentful. Because this is upsetting her, she becomes sensitive to these red flags and aware of them and picks up on them the same way a viewer is able to do from outside. In our case, it's not resentment of Ruby that tips us off to them, it's awareness of how these kinds of stories work, having seen these redemption arcs before, and recognizing that this is too fast, too easy. It's the same recognition, it's just for us it's coming via narrative logic, and for her it's coming via feelings of resentment. It also, story structure-wise, because we are predisposed to distrust a conclusion that comes from an idiosyncratic emotional response rather than some kind of evidence, especially when it's somebody who has a history of strong emotional responses, and especially when it's a woman, because we're a sexist culture, and we tend to dismiss the feelings of women, while treating equally emotional responses of men as if they're hard, cold, rational logic. There's the very fact that Lapis and Lapis alone is distrusting of this causes us to distrust our own recognition of those red flags. and helps make that twist be a twist, so that even though we kind of see it coming, we're distrusting our own suspicion until confirmation. And part of why we're distrusting it is because Lapis is voicing it in these very emotional ways, and we're culturally predisposed to dismiss her concerns because of where they come from and who they come from. It's very cleverly done, and just an all-around good episode. Not, heights of absolute genius, but a good episode. I think that's about it. So I'll see you all next time with, I believe some more Gravity Falls is up next. Bye!